Hello, Dave. I received your email and your insightful questions. And while they are easy to ask, they are not easy to answer. They are. It's going to take some discussion. And rather than me try to type for half an hour and send you an email and try to describe things in an email, we're going to do a video for you here. All right, you receive the parts kit and start checking the booster for, I'm reading from your email, for needed repairs and found lots of pits in the cylinder shell. I'm assuming you mean the vacuum can, and pits in there is fairly common. You can see this one here is pretty well eaten up. And this is what they look like when they're smooth. Now, I saw a picture of your shell, and you've smoothed it. You've obviously cleaned it or sanded in there, and you got a very smooth surface, relatively smooth. You asked me what causes these pits. I am guessing it is water, but not sure how water can get into the vacuum cylinder. Well, possibly water, but in my opinion, it is brake fluid had leaked into the vacuum side of the booster, of the can rather, and brake fluid is really vicious stuff. There's nothing will resist brake fluid, even powder coating. Nothing will resist brake fluid, and so the brake fluid has gotten into your vacuum can and eaten through the cadmium plating that was in here originally, and then once that was eaten through, you had raw steel, and since the booster is exposed to atmospheric coming through this tube right here, you've got humid air getting in there, and after 40 or 50 years, you get rust pits. How critical is it to be fully smooth? Well, you need it smooth enough so that the lips of the diaphragm will catch and hold vacuum or pressure. In this case, this is how I test it. I put it in here with my finger over the hole right here and push down, and if the lips catch and hold pressure, you should not be able to push this down. Once you're compressing the air, you should not be able to move this at all, but as you can see, this one, these lips are shot and no longer functioning. So that's how I test to see if the diaphragm is going to hold pressure, or the can and the diaphragm are going to hold pressure. And with your pits in there, what's going to happen is as this diaphragm goes past the pits, you're going to have a place for the vacuum to leak. And that you may not notice it in braking, but it would become more evident in your idle on your vehicle. Vacuum leak will give you an erratic idle. Okay, also I found lots of waxy grease on the rubber seal and in the cylinder. Well, first things first, I did not see that you've got a rubber seal. I looked at your photos and blew it up, and you've got a leather seal, a leather diaphragm. In fact, if you had a rubber diaphragm, I replaced these things like cordwood, and here's a bunch of them right here. This is what a rubber diaphragm will look like. Well, first of all, it's rubber, and secondly, it's got a crisscross hatch pattern in here. Cross hatch pattern in here to hold that grease that you're talking about. And you can see I got a bunch of these I've replaced. In fact, there's a leather one I replaced that was shot. And this is a good example to see what's inside of the leather diaphragm. Your perimeter is packed full of grease. It's not supposed to have grease in it. You've got a wick back here. And that's what the wick looks like. It's an actual piece of felt. And this one's soaked full of brake fluid. Anyway, that wick is designed to hold and wick mineral oil around the leather diaphragm to keep it moist and pliable. And as you may have remember in the repair manual, right down here, lubrication. All right, the vacuum cylinder, this is the vacuum, and that's the cylinder, should not be lubricated until the unit is installed, so to prevent oil from coming into contact with the rubber cups. That means they don't want you to fill this thing full of oil to lubricate the diaphragm, and then you're installing it and twisting and turning around and getting the mineral oil where it's not supposed to be. I don't think that's a real issue, but they do. All right, when lubricating, the engine should be turned off, blah, blah, blah. All right. Care should be taken that the quantity of oil amounts to approximately 2 cubic inches, but no more, of vacuum cylinder oil should be added every 18,000 miles or at least once a year. That is to lubricate the leather diaphragm. Well, guess what? You showed me your vacuum can, and you don't have any way to put mineral oil in there. Your vacuum can has no port. This is what your vacuum can is supposed to look like. It's got to have a port in here so that from the rear you undo this plug and you dribble in your mineral oil, obviously to this level, and then you put the plug back in, and that is then wicked around the by the felt wick in here to keep the leather lubricated. So somebody has been into your booster and screwed it up, basically. Somebody did not know what they're doing. One of the ways I can tell is because you've got a PAL nut on here to help secure this big nut, and they got a PAL nut on there which only was used on the rubber diaphragms. So you got two issues going on. You really need to either have to replace the can with one that's got a port on the bottom of it, get another can like this, or you need to get rid of the leather diaphragm and put a rubber one in there. And the grease that you're talking about that's packed all around here is the only method of lubrication when you have a can with no port on it, and that's the kind of grease that you're supposed to put on the rubber diaphragm. You're supposed to pack it into the cross hatching here, and of course all inside the cylinder, and this cross hatching holds the grease, and you got permanent lubrication. The lubricant I recommend is Super Lube, and you can get that from Ace Hardware. So you've got a decision to make. Try to figure out, get another can, or the easiest and probably the cheapest is going to be to replace your leather diaphragm with a rubber diaphragm. Now then, in terms of the pits, let's see here. Let's go on to your I'm attaching two photos for you to see what I'm talking about. Thanks for your time. Let's see. You mentioned use epoxy to fill the pits. I work on laptops and use two-part epoxy to repair broken plastic parts. Is that the same type of epoxy? Yes, you can use that epoxy to repair to fill in the pits. You can see we got some here that need to be dealt with. Now then, the problem is, what are you going to do to refinish the inside of this can so that it is not raw steel? Because the picture you showed me is a nicely sanded down vacuum can, but it's raw steel. You've got to have something to keep that steel from rusting. If you don't have any plating on the metal here, you're going to start generating rust, and the rust will just tear up either the leather or the rubber vacuum diaphragm. And you got to have the raw steel covered somehow. So maybe you can paint it, and then see if the diaphragm is going to seal against the paint. I have no idea. I get these cans cadmium plated, just like original, which is very durable and will serve you for many years to come. Now then, let's see here. In fact, if one is changing the leather diaphragm to a rubber diaphragm, there's a very small O-ring that came with the kit. It's about the diameter of your little finger here, right here, and that goes underneath here to seal the vacuum shaft to the diaphragm. Now let's see if there's anything else that I'm forgetting that you need to know about. Assembly fluid. If you want to use assembly fluid, well, no, not if you want to. You need to use assembly fluid. I suggest castor oil, but you can get from the hardware store, or no, rather from the pharmacy. Let's see, what else? I don't know. I guess that's it for starters. You can ask questions on this video or by email. Oh, I know. If you were to want to clean your leather and try to reuse it, you want to get rid of all this grease, and I would clean it with lacquer thinner to try to get the grease and oil out of the away from the leather, and to clean up the felt inside here. And then I would get mineral oil from the pharmacy, and then you soak the leather in mineral oil, and that'll bring it back to life. Quite frankly, the leather diaphragms outlast the rubber. You'll get 50 years out of this leather diaphragm, and you get probably about 10 or 15 out of the rubber diaphragm. And there's not much we can do about that. It's unfortunate, but that's the case. So let's see here. What else? All right. Thanks, and hope this helped a little bit.